All right, guys, welcome back to Scene of the Week. My name is Jake Jordan, and with the end of the term nearing, uh, I find it fitting to kind of create this final video to reflect on my work um, for the last few months. And I think that this will be a fun way to kind of analyze what I've done throughout the term, as well as kind of share with you guys what I've learned throughout this kind of creative journey. So, without further ado, let's watch the first video, which was the Jaws Brody Kills the Beast recreation.
You son of a...
Now, with this shoot, I guess the biggest thing that I really didn't anticipate was the importance of having a plan coming into the shooting process. Typically, I normally do have a plan going into it. Not to say that I don't do that, but in terms of recreating a scene where you already kind of know what you want it to look like in the end. I really didn't assume that there was going to be a need to have everything kind of well thought out. It was very much a shoot on the go, kind of pulling things together last minute. Like, oh, what if we do this, this, and this, like on set. So I think that was something. Ultimately, it didn't really go terribly. I thought the final product came out really nicely, but there was definitely a lot of time in between each shot where we were kind of contemplating on what we would want to do. We as in terms of my sister and myself who were shooting the video. The shark I had thought about before, that was kind of obvious to me by having it on the skateboard. That was kind of my idea along the whole way. But I think that overall, in terms of what type of shots I was looking for, I really didn't think about it. I thought it would kind of come naturally to me by just knowing what I wanted to do by recreating this scene, but it really was completely different because ultimately the set is completely different. The acting is completely different. All the materials are completely different. And so it's a completely different medium in which I have access to in terms of creating. So it really is a different scene, and that was something I learned. Even though you have this idea of what you want it to look like, but after recreating it, you still should have a plan going into the shooting process. It definitely will help streamline the experience overall. And ultimately, that's what I found with the next video, which was the Pulp Fiction miracle scene, which we will take a look at now.
You ever read the Bible, Brett?
Yes.
There's a passage I got memorized seems appropriate for this situation. Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the inequities of the selfish and tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who, in the name of charity and goodwill, shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness. For he is truly his brother's keeper, and the finder of lost children.
And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger for those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is the Law when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
I'm so dead. I'm so dead. I'm so dead.
Is he a friend of yours? Oh, Vincent Marvin. Marvin Vincent.
Alright, well, can you tell him to shut the hell up? He's getting on my nerves. Marvin. I would knock that off if I were you.
Die, you motherfucker!
mean, kind of going off of what we talked about in the Jaws discussion, this was a really difficult scene to pull off in terms of what we had to do in order to create the same sort of effect that the Pulp Fiction scene wanted to do, which was have the two agents kind of come into this guy's house, pretty much blow him to bits, and then have this guy in the bathroom and this other guy on the floor who are kind of victimized by these people, or by John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson. So right there, we had a much more complex scene to deal with. So right then, I kind of thought about how I might be able to pull it off, and I thought the best way to do it was to have my sister play both agents, Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta. It just made the most sense to me. Same clothes. I mean, they're wearing the same outfit, so I figure why not? I'll just like glasses on and off for changing their personality. And there was only 2 scenes where they were actually on camera together, so I think that was fine. But definitely a lot more dialogue based, definitely a lot more complex in terms of what we were trying to accomplish here. So the importance of a plan was way more than I ever kind of thought it would be, especially for Jaws. Like, this one really I really needed to have my ideas honed in and kind of well thought out before getting into the shooting process. So that was really key. And ultimately, I think the final product came out pretty solid, other than a few like issues with some like special effects, meaning like muzzles and bullet wounds. I think the final product came out great. And that was due to the planning and execution of that plan, by having the camera on the tripod for masking in 2 different characters as my sister, of playing both different agents. That was key, and definitely something that I had to be thinking about early on before I started just thinking about how I was going to do it. So yeah, definitely here realized the importance of planning, even though we are trying to recreate something that is pre-existing, and that you already have an idea of what you want it to look like. But yeah, I think my sister playing the 2 different people was definitely a nice little twist that I added. It was kind of my own thing, my own little touch, in terms of it really shows that I was really limited in my resources here. So I'm proud of this one. I'm happy with the way it turned out. And also myself playing 3 different characters. I thought that worked out fine. I sent the video to my family and my aunt and uncle. They understood everything that was going on. My grandma understood it. So to me, that's a successful story. When you can send it to other people and they view it and they understand what's going on, because ultimately you do get lost in the editing process, and you get so fixated on what you know about the story, but you kind of lose sight of what the first time viewer may think. And that is something that I'll always make sure to do, is to welcome that feedback, to know that even if you think something's perfect, it might not be, because you have ultimately watched the scene like 50 times during the editing process, probably more. Whereas it's about your audience. It's not about you. So I think that's the real key thing, is making sure your audience will understand what you want to try and show. So yeah, I think by getting that feedback from my aunt and uncle, that was definitely a big thumbs up to me, to make sure, hey, even before you finish a project, reach out to a few people, have them watch it, really have them see whether they kind of see eye to eye with you in terms of what you want to get on screen with what they're seeing. So yeah, definitely a lot that came out of this project. So let's move on to the next one. So with the Daniel Schiffer B-roll challenge, there were definitely a lot of challenges posed here. In terms of action, there was a lot more I'm going to use a fake word here, or what I think is a fake word. There was a lot more synchronicity that I think needed to be executed here in terms of what we were doing with on camera, what we were doing with the action over here. I should hold it like this. So this was really important, getting the motion in sync with the camera. And that ultimately was my responsibility as a creator. Communicating with my mom, who was my actor, to try and get on the same wavelength, to make sure that she understood what I was trying to accomplish. So that was a really difficult step, because we kind of think differently about certain things. So it was just naturally, I'm sure you can understand that there are challenges that come with that communication aspect. Going into it, I had a plan of what I wanted to do, but it ultimately didn't really go the way I planned. Each shot took so many tries to execute perfectly. And with that said, none of them really came out exactly how I had hoped them to come out. So I guess another key thing that I took away from this is how important patience is. So yeah, that is something that I will definitely keep with me, and know that I need to keep a clear head as I'm going through these projects and shooting them, and making sure to not just lose it if something doesn't go right. Because that was definitely what happened here. We were just I was just like, oh, can we do that again? Oh, like, it was just a stressful process, and I ultimately lost sight of the bigger picture here, which is why I needed to kind of create those almost fake transitions that you see, which is like the pan wiping, and because I didn't really think out how each shot would transition to the next. The only time that really happened was when at the beginning you see the camera kind of pan down, and then it comes in panning down to the next shot. But other than that, everything else is really kind of just mushed together. I mean, yeah, there's a couple cool camera rotations with the action that's going on, but nothing that really cohesively strings the next thing to the next shot with the previous shot. So definitely patience is really key here in order to make sure that you have your eye on the big picture, which is trying to create one cohesive video that is seemingly seamless. So yeah, that's the biggest thing I took away from this. Patience. Always have patience while you're shooting. Don't lose track of what the big picture is. That is key. Kind of self-explanatory. Kind of seems like, whoa, no crap. Like, isn't that what you should always be doing? But it's easier said than done, for sure. Especially working with people that you wouldn't normally be working with as actors. So yes, that is what I learned from it. Patience, keep your eye on the big picture. Without further ado, let's go into the final video of the Scene of the Week series, the Western Shootout. All right. let's get into it. So this last video was kind of a culmination of what I've learned from the whole entire term, knowing that this was kind of going to be the last thing that Jed and I would be doing together. Ultimately, it didn't really come together at the end, but that's all right. It's coming together now. But anyways, I think this was definitely kind of an example of kind of bringing everything together uh, in terms of having a plan, knowing what you're going to do before, or that's kind of having a plan. Um, being patient for sure, especially with having so many different camera angles. That was definitely key. My sister was like, dude, why are we getting so many different camera angles? Like, why does that matter? I'm like, trust me, like, it'll be worth it. Patience. And that was kind of me mediating her patience, because I know that like it's going to be worth it. You just got to muscle through it. And then creating within a certain set of, not boundaries, I would say. I guess this was the most free range type of video, or one of the most free range videos we've had, and kind of emulating a style of editing and filming, which was the Western shootout type scene. So I think that with that, there was a lot of range in terms of what we could do with the camera and with the angles, and character development too. Like there was no character development. All you know is that like I was wearing this and a little hat. My sister has a bandana over her face and her sunglasses, and those are just like distinguishing features between the two. You can clearly tell that I was maybe not the bad guy. Ultimately, you don't know anything, but you can clearly tell that we are on opposing sides. And I tried to wear something a little darker, and like kind of red, and she was wearing a lot of blue. And I think that our outfits, in a way, I actually did think about a little bit, making sure that she was wearing a blue bandana, and I gave her my sunglasses specifically because they were blue. So just in very little things that help create this feeling of battling people, one on this side, one on this side. But yeah, that was a really fun edit to make. Dealing with a lot of different camera angles, it's something that we don't really often get to see, really only in well thought out productions, not to hype myself up or anything, but yeah, really it takes a lot of planning in order to get that many angles and to kind of create that feeling that you're really immersed in between these two characters, that they're about to go that something's about to go down. I know definitely like you could have like maybe like a medium shot of one person, medium shot of the other person, and a wide shot of the two, and then string those together and call that the same Western shootout that we just did. But ultimately, the angles from behind the back and those close-ups of the eyes, that I really thought those were necessary in terms of kind of giving it a little more punch and a little more emotion in the final product. So that was definitely a fun thing. I got to think about beforehand. Had a list of shots I wanted for each person. And yeah, I thought that came together really nicely. It was like 1 a.m. when I finished editing it, and I ultimately forgot to do the gunshot sounds before finalizing, which is kind of a lame excuse. But honestly, I think looking back at it, it's clear that I shot first. My sister dodged the bullet and she shot me. So I'm proud of that. It's very raw. There's no special effects here other than the very classic scaling up the frame to give that sort of extra punch to the shot. Because beforehand, all the shots were just on tripods. They were just kind of steady, stationary shots that weren't really that dynamic. But adding those keyframes in to scale it up and to pan it to the right or left as if it were the camera in the scene, I think it gives a little more personality. It gives a little more emotion, as I keep saying. But yeah, definitely a culmination of kind of what I've been doing for the past 3 weeks or the past 4 weeks leading up to that point. A lot of different creative techniques used, a lot of different mental techniques used, I guess. Uh, Making sure to kind of follow a certain style, but also do what you can to put your own twist on it. That is ultimately what this channel is about, and I think that was a great way to finish off the channel. Um, so yeah, without further ado, I'll get into a final conclusion, and we'll say goodbye to scene of the week. Maybe someone in the within the next year or so will pick up the channel, pick up the idea, and keep it going. But it's been a great term. I learned so much from this process, um, and just even talking about it now, it's kind of eye opening. Damn, I like created a lot of pretty cool. Created a bunch of pretty cool little, not short films, but projects. So yeah, it was definitely a fun ride. Thanks to Jed for all his hard work and partnership throughout. Couldn't have done it without him. Thank you to Mr. Kelman for kind of letting us go in a completely different path than everyone else. I think everyone else is kind of submitting their own final videos or whatever that may look like. We kind of chose to do something different. So thank you to him for letting us kind of explore this new area of film analysis as well as creative creative outlet for myself and Jed. But yeah, thank you very much. It's been a great term. Peace out, guys. This has been fun. Scene of the week out.